What's up guys, Phoenix here. This video is going to be another Yu-Gi-Oh card review / discussion type video, and it's going to be on a card that not a lot of people have actually warmed up to or acknowledged as being good or playable, even though it is very comparable to certain extra deck power cards in one of the best decks from the previous year, as well as also being comparable to another very powerful extra deck card that for a period of a few years was considered an extra deck staple. Now, the card in question is Samurai Cavalry of Reptier, and there have been a few people that have noticed how good this card is, and they've played them at ARG state level events, regional level events, what have you, in their pendulum-based decks, and they have seen success with the card. And I've been seeing nothing but confusion from a massive amount of people wondering why the person was playing this card, if it was just like a random pick choice or something like that, and I can say that that is very much not the case. Now, I also was a sleeper on this card when I saw it at the Dimension of Chaos Sneak Peek. This card is available as ultra rare from the Dimension of Chaos Sneak Peek promo, or you can get it in rare form from the actual set itself. So those are the two available rarities. But I originally read this card and I was like, this card's okay, but then I stopped and thought about it for a bit, and I realized that this card's effect is actually just a better form of both El Shaddoll Construct, which has been the powerhouse card that has just been banned from the Shaddoll archetype from the previous year, and was easily considered the most powerful fusion monster that deck could summon in terms of what it did for the game, and what it could out, because it could out any special summoned monster, in theory. And it also has correlations to Ally of Justice Catastor, which for a period of a solid 3 to 4 years, that card was considered an extra deck staple. If you had synchro summoning capabilities in your deck, even if you didn't, if you ran no tuners but you had a monster reborn in your deck somewhere, you played a Catastor because your extra deck was open enough to where if you had the situation where you reborned a level 1 tuner from your opponent's graveyard, you wanted to be able to make something powerful, and that was Catastor at that point in time in the game's history, because we didn't have a big Xyz pool back then either, so that was also a factor. But regardless, that is a different topic altogether. This card's effect is comparable to both those cards, and it is exclusive to Pendulum archetypes. Now, its effect is at the start of damage step. If this card attacks an opponent's face-up monster that is not a Pendulum monster, you can destroy that monster. So basically, every single card in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! That isn't a Pendulum monster can be auto-killed by this at the start of the damage step, making it basically a Catastor / Construct, except instead of the monster having to be special summoned or a non-dark, it just has to be a non-Pendulum, which is very easy to fulfill at this point in time, because there are a lot more non-Pendulum monsters than there are Pendulum monsters. There are about, 13 years worth of non-Pendulum monsters in the game, and this card is just a very good card in general because it outs monster floodgates very easily and very efficiently, in the form of, like, this card can out Vandy's Fiend. It can out any monster floodgate that isn't named Majesty's Fiend, and it can out all of your Cosmo cards, and it can out all the Cosmo cards in the Cosmo matchup. And that's why a lot of people have been playing this card in the side rather than playing Cyber Dragons and Chimera Techs, because those only out the big ships. If you're playing a Pendulum-based strategy, sure, the big ships are usually the only things you're really worried about, but you can also be caught off guard and, actually just be in very bad positions if you fall prey to, like, things like Jurigitos out of nowhere, or like having to deal with a Jurigito that you know is there, or falling victim to anything like an Honest that you didn't have a read on. This card does not have that problem, while also being a card that is searchable off of Wavering Eyes, thus giving you potentially more copies of it than you would ever have Cyber Dragons. And the fact that it's a Pendulum monster means that it's reusable every single turn that you have a scale up in whatever Pendulum relevant deck you are playing. So this card, while it doesn't necessarily out the big ships in the Cosmo matchup that efficiently, they will still get their effects to summon, smaller ships. That's easily mitigatable via, having an Abyss Dweller on the board alongside this card. Sure, this card can fall into things like Mirror Force, but that's not really going to be that big of a threat, because you can just Pendulum it out again next turn. This card has the capability that Cyber Dragon does not have in the Cosmo matchup, where it is constantly there. As soon as you have one, you have it for the rest of the game unless it gets banished. There is no way that you are going to lose this card, and this card can out every Cosmo monster. It can attack a Farm Girl, hit the start of damage step, destroy it. Honest isn't a factor. It can attack the big ships that can't be targeted by your normal stuff. Say you're playing Magispectors, and you can pop that big ship. Sure, it'll get its effect to summon something if you hadn't made an Abyss Dweller or something like that to prevent the ships from activating, but you have all these different things that can go into play. This is also just a very good card to pair with Imperial Iron Wall as another side deck card for the Cosmo matchup if you are playing something like Magispectors. I will use Magispectors as my primary example because that is the deck I'm currently playing, and I am currently siding 2 to 3 of this card. I haven't finalized a number yet, but this card is absolutely amazing in terms of what it does, and I can see this card being a very usable side deck asset, if not main deck asset, going forward in the future with more pendulum-based strategies, because whenever there's going to be a monster that is not a pendulum on the board, it's probably going to be a monster-based floodgate, like Vanity's Fiend, something like that, and as long as it's not Majesty's Fiend, this card can out it. That is very big, that's very relevant. Some people have been talking about siding Fog Kings for Magispectors. This can out Fog King. There's a lot of different things, as well as it being reusable. Sure, it only gets its effect if it attacks an opponent's face-up monster, but the fact that it can die on your opponent's turn is irrelevant, because as long as you keep a scale up that can summon level 4 monsters from your extra deck, you can special summon this from your extra deck every single turn, and thus continually out those threats. So this card is very, very good at getting over things and getting over problems, and that is... Oh my god, I'm so just destroyed with sickness right now. And that kind of card is something that you are really going to be valuing as the pendulum mechanic itself gains more headway and more support. Sure, this card will be phased out a bit more in the future when it's more pendulum-based archetypes just going ham, but the fact that what the pendulum-based archetypes coming out that we know of do is they get to abuse Xyz summons, and this card can out those as well. There's still a lot of playability for this card, but I could see it falling off in versatility and, playability in the future, much how Allied Justice Catastor kind of fell off towards the end. But for at least the next, half a year to year or so, I believe this card to be a very solid card, especially as long as decks like Cosmo and Infernoid are going to continue being parts of the metagame. As long as there's going to be at least one of the best decks that is not heavily pendulum based, this card is going to retain side deckable value, and that's just something I wanted to put out there for you guys, because a lot of people have been just sleeping on this card. They don't want to read it because they assume that because it's a promo, it's trash. Reborn Tengu was a promo. There have been a lot of good promos in the games past, but they're very few and far between. This is one of the few. But, that was just all I wanted to talk about in this video. Maybe you guys agree with me, maybe you disagree with me, but I personally think that this is just overall a very solid card going forward, and it should warrant some testing if your deck can pendulum summon level 4s out consistently. You should definitely test this card in your main or your side, see how you like it in certain matchups, and I think it's a very solid pick going forward for at least the next foreseeable 6 months, because, as I've already said, any pendulum-based deck is going to also be Xyz summoning, because that is a very efficient way of continually using those pendulumed resources going further into the game. But anyway, that is all for this video. As always, guys, comment, rate, subscribe, do all that nonsense that you usually do. Like the video if you like the content I've been producing and want to support my channel's growth now as well as in the future. Links are in the description to both my Facebook pages. Click on that if you have not. I'd greatly appreciate it. It helps me make money, and there's no reason to lie to you guys about that. If you have an ad block enabled, please take a few seconds out of your day and remove it. Refresh the video. Click an ad or two. Do whatever you want to do, then put the ad block back on when you're done. I would be greatly appreciative to you if you would be able to do that, and it helps me out more than you could ever know. But let me know what you guys think about this card in the comments down below. If you have any other cards you want me to talk about, preferably from the newest set, of what you think, of what you want to know my opinion of in terms of quantifying its use or whatever, and just overall just having a think tank, because that's ultimately what I like to do with these types of videos. Let me know in the comments down below. But other than that, that's it for this video, and as always guys, take care.